Hello, Anne.
Hi.
Welcome back to another installment of Ask Eddie and Anne and Charlotte or Emily or whoever that is sitting back there.
There's two of them. You just can't see. You can barely see one of them if you.
Oh, I see. I see one on the top by the pillow there. Yes, I
Yeah.
see. I see her now. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. There will be no Tizzy in. Although, if you've been watching TCM, you notice that Tizzy has made her TCM debut. She has actually appeared on the network in a promo for Noir Alley. It's pretty funny. And I think people all across America are now seeing Tizzy and all having the same reaction. Whoa, what's up with that cat? What is up with that cat and the weird way she sits and just how bizarre she is? But she hit her mark. She did her job. She dips her nose in a martini and like pulls it back the way cats do. It's very funny. So I hope people have a chance to see that. So anyway, how are you, Anne?
Good. I had lunch with John Noe at John's Grill.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Not, in fact, it's not John's Grill.
No, it's not John's Grill. It's John's Grill, which is a very famous restaurant in San Francisco. It's mentioned in the Maltese Falcon. So for
I
people
wish
who
I could have
don't
joined
know,
you guys today, but I was just inundated with stuff. Two other Zoom things I had to do, and it was just berserk. But yes, John spells his name differently than the John of John's Grill. So,
that's true.
but was it good? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was really great. We talked a little bit. We both worked in video stores in Seattle. So yeah, because he worked at Backtrack. That's actually when he first met me, because they were one of the few places that rented laser discs back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it was near, at that time it was near the Blockbuster that I was working at. And then also George, who founded Scarecrow Video, um, got his start actually is in Backtrack's video in the back with his horror imports, and that was kind of the start of the Scarecrow empire.
Yeah. And John is a great guy. I've known him for years. He always comes to Noir City in Seattle, and I've been on his radio show up there, Johnny's Juke Joint, numerous times. He has incredible musical knowledge and taste in music, and is always turning me on to all sorts of fantastic stuff. And it's always a pleasure to just hang out with John. And I wish I could have done that
Yeah,
today, but anyway, but I'm glad that you had that opportunity.
yeah, and it's like a
Um,
15-minute walk from my house to John's, so that also
perfect,
helps. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And let's see what else. I've since the last time I saw you, I can't keep track of any of this stuff. I did Mexico, right? I was in
Yeah.
Mexico before. We've talked about that, and then I
Before the
did the
last one.
cruise. Then
Yeah.
I did the cruise since I think we last talked, and that was great fun. We had a ball on the cruise. That was just fabulous.
Yeah. And just so,
I
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to mention, because so many people asked about the cruise, and they were that they've already like announced the next one. So if people are
Yes,
interested in next year, I would, start looking into that now, because I know by the time we were talking about it, people couldn't get on anymore. So
right. I this year was a slightly smaller ship. Um, I don't know exactly why, and it left out of the West Coast, which I loved. Next year, it will leave out of Fort Lauderdale and going to Cozumel on the east coast of Mexico. So sailing out of Florida and through the Gulf. Uh, and I think it's October 26th to the 31st. So we disembark on Halloween.
oh my god.
Something tells me this will play into the theme of the festival, or the cruise, or anyway, it was great fun. At some point during our conversation here, I may tell you a couple of funny stories that transpired on the cruise that were really, really great. But it was all good. And now I'm home, and I'm very, very happy that I have no more festivals and no more extensive travel through the end of the year. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and just to remind people, so we announced premature because I know our last episode we thought that the tickets and passes would be on tickets for NOIR City Xmas and passes for NOIR City 21 would be on sale, which they were not, but at this point they are, just so people know. So NOIR City, so you want to talk about NOIR City Xmas?
NOIR City Xmas will be December 20th at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, California. Um, I guess I guess this is, I can't keep track anymore.
November
Either
30th. This is going to air on November 30th.
this will end on November 30th, but I'm presuming that the announcement of the show will have already appeared online.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're
and passes
showing.
will be on sale. Yeah.
Great. So you can buy passports now, I guess, for the Noir City 21, the festival in January. And I suppose you can also buy tickets to the Noir City Xmas show on the 20th of December, where we will be showing one movie. We used to do double bills, but I find now probably a single movie with some added bonus activity at the show is the way to go, because we do it. We always, the way the holiday falls, we're always doing Noir City Xmas in the middle of the week, and it's a little much to ask people to stay for two movies in the middle, on a Wednesday night. So we're showing the one movie, which is Cover Up from 1949, which we had a big article about. Bob Sassoni, from who normally writes for the Saturday Evening Post, did a story about this in the last issue of the Noir City magazine. And I think Bob wasn't even aware when he wrote the story that the UCLA Film and Television Archive has restored the film. Not with the Film Noir Foundation. They just restored it on their own. God love them. So we're showing that with Dennis O'Keefe and William Bendix. It's a really fun Christmas movie. So that will be the December 20th show. And also, I'm just going to throw out for people in the Bay Area, I'm doing a special event on December 15th at the Empress Theater in Vallejo, California, which is a beautiful old venue, with Nick Rossi, fabulous jazz guitarist, who is the musical director of the Noir City Film Festivals. And Nick and I will, there'll be a book signing. Alibi Books is selling all of my latest books. And then Nick and I will engage in a nice leisurely talk on stage that I'm really looking forward to. And then we're showing Pitfall, which some people don't know. We chose because Vallejo is Raymond Burr's hometown.
Oh,
and
okay.
so we picked a noir with Raymond Burr. And Pitfall is always good for another spin. So it should be a lot of fun. I think if you can find all that stuff, I'm sure online. If you go to the Empress Theater in Vallejo, or I'm sure you're handling this as well, and so that people should be able to get tickets well in advance. That is December 15th, and then Noir City Xmas is December 20th.
Cool.
And then the Noir City, the next year of festivals begins January 19th through the 28th at the Grand Lake in Oakland, California. Very excited. There's about 5 outstanding bookings that we haven't corralled yet.
Oh my God.
For that.
How many films are we showing?
24 films, and yes, five of them have proven to be, I don't want to say problematic, but just we haven't locked it down yet. But this is nothing to worry about. Some years we're taking it up to, it'll be like January 14th and we still haven't gotten a confirmation that we have the film to screen. It's very unnerving. at times. But this is what happens in this day and age when you're trying to show obscure films. And I would say that about half the movies that we're showing in this upcoming festival are pretty obscure. And I'm if we don't get a couple of these, I will be hugely disappointed, because they're movies that I've discovered recently that I just could not wait to show on the big screen, because I know they'll blow people away. But we gotta lock them in.
Do you want to tell everybody? Do you want to tell everybody the Italian film story? Because it's like the best story about a NOIR City film and getting
go right ahead.
No, you tell it. It happened to you.
This must have been the 4 Ways Out, the screening of 4. Yeah, and this is the same thing. We're kind of going through this again, because when you book foreign films and source them overseas, you're never exactly sure whether it's going to be easy or ridiculously difficult. So I had learned about this film, 4 Ways Out, an Italian film from 1951, co-written by Federico Fellini, and it's a really, really terrific heist movie. The heist starts right at the beginning, and then it's like, how are these guys going to get away with it? But I said, well, look, here's the thing, you have, because when you're doing these festivals, you have to clear the rights on the film, and then you have to actually get the film. And these are not always done through the same channels, right? I mean, the rights could belong to somebody else, but you actually have to find the best copy of the film in a different place. So it was so weird, because I had a backup of this film that was just a digital copy of it on a thumb drive. That literally was like my backup. If all else fails, I have this, because you do have to announce the schedule and print your programs and all that stuff well in advance. And you're still kind of, are we going to get this or not? And we tracked down, that Cinecittà in Rome had the film, and they said, yeah, we'll send you a 35 millimeter print of the film. And literally 2 days before the screening, we still had not gotten the film. And it was like, well, we're just going to have to suck it up and show, ingest this, the info off this thumb drive and just show it that way. And I walked out of my house, like, I think it was the opening day of the festival, and there's this smashed carton on my porch that is the film sent to me from Italy. But the weird part was they never had my home address. Like, I don't know. I mean, Anita made this booking, and it was like, ship it to the Castro Theater. And nowhere on the paperwork was my home address included ever. It never is, right?
Yeah.
And the film just showed up on my front porch. And it's like, is this the mob? We know where you live. I don't know what that was all about. That was the weirdest experience. It's like, well, the good news is we got the film. The bad news is it's kind of in a smashed box, and it was shipped to my house, which I don't have any idea how that happened. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. It was a great film. Okay, yeah. But we're going to get rolling here. I'm going to read the first one, because this is obviously written to you, because whoever wrote this, Mike in Chicago, knows who the huge Jack Webb fan is here. So Mike says, I've been watching a lot of Dragnet, listening to Dragnet on the Radio Classics too, and Adam 12 reruns. Okay. I have recognized actors in these episodes that are also in many noir movies. My question, were these cameo actors answering casting calls, or were they cast by the direction and or favor of Jack Webb? He seems to have a great deal of influence and apparent loyalty to friends in acting.
Yes, they were cast because of Jack Webb.
By and large, I believe that is absolutely the truth. Yes.
Yeah, and there were also a lot of people that were did a lot of radio work that also were on episodes of Dragnet. But I think my favorite thing about him casting people is in the show Emergency, which he produced. He actually cast his ex-wife, Julie London, and
Julie
her
London,
current
yeah.
husband, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, Bobby Troop, and
Yeah.
I kind of know through my friend Dennis. I know Randy Mantooth, who was one of the stars of Emergency. Were you a Randy Mantooth fan? He's a pretty nice guy. Yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, Jack Webb was like the original Angela Lansbury in that respect. Like great deal of respect and appreciation for actors that obviously, Jack Webb, he came up as an actor in Hollywood, and before he became a producer, he worked with all these people. So that doesn't surprise me at all. But now, since Mike's question was specific to the Jack Webb shows, I mean, in his case, I think he knew exactly who he was casting, and I don't think. I mean, I've heard horrible stories from actors of that era saying how demeaning it was to be called in to do a reading for some young director who had no idea who they were, you know, and that's just terrible, and I'm sure Jack Webb never made anybody do that. It was just like, we're casting you, the part's yours, come in, we're going to have a good time, let's do it. But I remember like Audrey Totter told me that she made she was a regular on Medical Center, if you remember that, with Chad Everett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was like the original, not the original ER, but it was like ER before ER. And Audrey had a recurring role as one of the nurses on the floor or something, and that was not a role where it was like, oh, we loved Audrey Totter in all these old films. She went in cold and like auditioned for it like everybody else, because she wanted to just keep working. And her husband was connected to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, so it I guess it kind of made sense to her that if she was going to work on something, it would be a medical show because it had some connection to her husband. She was so devoted to her husband, Fred, that it was like, holy cow. I don't know if she would have done another series, but she wanted to do Medical Center.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was
Yeah.
that's kind of fun to think about.
And it's really interesting too, because Harry Carey Jr. Wrote an autobiography that's really interesting. And one of the things he talks about is sort of being a jobbing actor and what that's like, to go out on auditions and you get all these parts and stuff. And, one of the things that was really interesting about Better Call Saul is I got really interested in Patrick Fabian because a couple seasons in, he just became a favorite character. He's such a great actor. When I looked at his film credits, and he has like 100 credits. I mean, that he's been a jobbing actor like all of his life. And this was like this huge breakout for me. So it was really funny because it got in the news that he bought like this really nice house, like somewhere fabulous. And like, I was so happy for because it felt like so deserved for someone that was like this jobbing actor for decades. And finally, really,
Well, it's so fascinating how actors, that's what they call the breakthrough role. Or in Patrick Fabian's case, it was like in some ways you think that's going to be like the defining role. You get the breakout role, like where you get noticed, then you get the defining role, which is like, this is what you're going to be remembered for. Right. I don't care whatever Bob Odenkirk does for the rest of his life. He's going to be Saul Goodman. I mean, that's his defining role.
Yeah. And well, actually, Patrick Fabian was talking to a friend and because he'd always said this, he was like, oh yeah, I'm always, when I die on my grave, my tombstone is going to be, he very famously went back to school, went to college. He was this professor that kissed like the girl, that was sort of the protagonist of the series and stuff. And that's what he'd be famous for. And his friend turned around and goes, oh no, Better Call Saul is now what you're going to be famous for.
Yeah. Yeah. I just find that so interesting. Like, even if Bryan Cranston just saying, if he like won an Oscar, at some point in the rest of his career, he would still be Walter White. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what he will always be most famous for. On Walter White on Breaking Bad, and you can see my earpiece. I've got a new earpiece, Ann, and it's like you can. Unfortunately, I look just like a Secret Service guy now because you can see it kind of sticking out here, and I got to figure out how to make that go away. That's not good. So
it's good to have long hair.
yeah. Okay. Hold on. I figured out how to do it. Okay.
Okay. So we need to get on to question 2.
All right.
This is from Steve in Exeter, New Hampshire. I was watching Passage to Marseille with Humphrey Bogart and Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre and Claude Rains. What a cast. So anyway, I noticed an inordinate number of flashbacks and flashbacks within flashbacks, etc. I think I counted 4 levels. I'm wondering if you know if there are any movies that beat this. Really, I've got one. Really like this movie, but the amount of flashbacks bordered on comical.
That's funny. I haven't seen Passage to Marseille in a long time, and I don't know. I don't recall it being flashback laden, but the Locket, with Lorraine Day and Brian Aherne and Robert Mitchum, and that's probably the most flashback driven movie because every character has flashbacks. The story is kind of kicked into gear with a flashback, and then characters are introduced within flashbacks, and then they tell their story, and there are more flashbacks. It's pretty insane. So the Locket, I think, is the one that has the most, but there's all kinds of them. I mean, it's really, when you watch Out of the Past, I mean, the movie flows so beautifully that you don't really realize how many flashbacks within flashbacks there are in Out of the Past. But I'm going to go back and watch Passage to Marseille again one of these days because I don't remember that being the case. But I'm not saying it's not, Steve. But what was the Locket, the movie you were thinking of?
Yeah, it was. And I would say also, if people have not seen it, Mike Flanagan did a film called Oculus. It's a horror film. And he's a guy who did Bly Manor and Midnight Mass and a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Series and Doctor Sleep. But Oculus was his second feature film. And it's about a brother and a sister, and the brother gets out of a mental ward because he's killed his father. And he's finally said, okay, it wasn't this. I know that it was just me and that there wasn't this mirror possessing my dad and all this stuff. And his sister picks him up and she's like, okay, I got the mirror. And she's like, no. She's like, I'm going to prove this. But what's interesting, so they start with like some flashbacks as a kid, but then at the kind of final sequence of the film, the past and present have collapsed so much into each other that they're interacting with their kid selves.
Holy cow.
I know. And it's really amazing because it's like the perfect portrayal of actually how trauma works, because people who don't have trauma might not realize this, but you can have these emotional states where you're literally right back where you were emotionally, and it was like such a perfect like metaphor for that. But anyway, I highly recommend Oculus. It's really a great film. Even if the thing is, if you don't like horror films, you'll still like it. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of gore and stuff in it. But it's really good.
I'll put that on my list. I've liked what I've seen of his work. I've enjoyed it. And what was the other thing I was just saying? Oh, I was just saying in that regard, I'm reading right now Cormac McCarthy's last novel, The Passenger. And it's kind of a mind-boggling book because I'm reading it and I realize I'm like 160 pages in and I have no idea what's going on in the book. I mean, it's utterly compelling, but it's like there's no graspable narrative in this book. But it's scene after scene is so compelling, and then gradually you start to figure out what's going on. And it's so amazing because parts of it are just these incredible fantasy scenes that you gradually come to realize are just the internalization of this one character who is, the flashback thing got me thinking about this. She's apparently dead when the story starts, but you're seeing these scenes of her, and she's a paranoid schizophrenic. And they're these crazy, like David Lynch, beyond David Lynch, weird scenes of her in her room dealing with these fictional characters that are literally coming out of the woodwork. And it's like, what does this have to do with the story of a salvage diver on the Mississippi River who's found a plane crashed with 8 passengers and 1 missing passenger? And the book is called The Passenger. And it's like, man, I can't wait to finish reading this book tonight, because it's got to pay off, but I'm like 240 pages into it. And it's like, I have no idea how this is all going to work out. It's kind of fascinating. You got to be a really good writer to make turning the pages that compelling when you are utterly lost as to what's going on in this narrative, So anyway, that's just a little throwaway there. I can't say I'm heartily recommending the book. If you've read Cormac McCarthy and you like his style, then by all means you're going to dig it. If you are unfamiliar with him, it can be a rough go. He rarely uses punctuation. He's a totally renegade writer. That's how I would describe him. He makes up words. He actually makes up words. Like you're reading and it's like, no, there's no such word as that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, there isn't.
Like James Joyce.
Yeah. A lot of similarities there. Okay. My focus just totally went out. I don't know if you ever.
I saw that. It just kind of went. Your hand's in focus. Hand looks great.
Okay. I must have leaned.
There you go.
There we go. Now I'll go back slowly. Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Here comes a question. James says, we don't have a location for James. Oh boy, here's a question. What are your thoughts about the censoring of an expletive spoken by Gene Hackman in The French Connection? I find this practice very dangerous. Now, this is followed by editor's note. Is this you wrote this? Okay. And this is very pertinent. Editor's note from Anne says, they were not expletives, they were racial epithets, which is true. It was Popeye spouting the N-word in a certain scene, and it was removed. But this is what's interesting. And then, did you provide this context from the New York Times?
Yes.
Okay. So that people know what we're talking about, I will read your contextual note. In June, viewers of the Criterion Channel streaming version noticed that much of the scene in question had been edited out without announcement or comment, and people viewing via Apple TV and Amazon found the same. It was reported that the version available on Disney Plus in Britain and Canada remains unedited. The film was also shown on, I believe, shown on TCM, and it was not edited. At this point, okay, so here's my take on all of this. There was a huge outcry from film fans, which I think was based on a justified fear that these big entities can take control of a movie and do whatever they want to alter them, right? And so there was an initial backlash was, oh my God, what's next? I felt like that was what was really behind all of the criticism, was if they can do this, where will they stop? What I've subsequently learned, and this was the question that I had immediately when this happened, because when it happened, William Friedkin was still alive, right? He died subsequently, but he was still alive. And I have since learned that he did it. Friedkin himself made the cut in the film. It was his decision. He didn't feel like, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. And, the guy tinkers. In the last few years of his life, he was tinkering. I don't want to say tinkering, but, if he had the chance to remaster the soundtrack for the French Connection, he did it. He did a whole beautiful new 4K version of Sorcerer. He messed around a lot with The Exorcist. I think he felt like this is my legacy that I'm leaving behind, because he was not in the best of health. And it was his decision to cut that out of the film. So while I understand people being like, oh my God, they're just doing this because they think they can correct the film or fix the film. Yeah, it's one thing if it's done by an outside entity. I think it's another thing if it's the director or the writer themselves making a change in the work for what they think is a justifiable reason, So in some cases, I don't see any difference. Like, I did a revised and expanded version of Dark City, and if you compare the two books, I changed a lot. I didn't just add to it. I went back and rewrote certain passages, changed wording, took out stuff that was potentially offensive to someone, because it's different and let's face it, from the time Friedkin made that film in the early 70s till today, it's different. Now, and that was his call. And people have heard us talk endlessly about how difficult it is to keep track of these things. So whereas Friedkin made the change when he knew it was going to be aired on one thing, somebody else who licenses the film may be working with a version that has not been edited yet, or may never be edited. I just know that on this cruise, this subject came up, and I was informed that Friedkin had, in fact, not only approved the cut, but had suggested the cut. So, that's good enough for me. And I would go so far as to add, people should be careful if they're arguing like this is horrible censorship and blah, blah, blah. It's also very offensive to a lot of people. It doesn't change the fact that that character, Popeye Doyle, is a stone prick racist in the film. Taking out this one word doesn't change the character in any substantive way, right? It's just like, I think Friedkin felt like, that's unnecessary. They didn't take out the scene where Popeye goes into the black bar and rousts everybody. And it's like, put all your shit on the table, on the bar. And he's just rude and, rude. He's a narcotics cop,
Yeah.
Of course he's going to be rude. But that scene stays in the movie. They didn't. So it's just weird that I think the protests are a little overly vehement. Like, leave the word in. Don't tamper with this work of art. And it's like, I would just advise, be very careful about choosing your battles, because to me, that's a pretty minor one. If they had really tampered with the character to like, we're going to change this guy's whole attitude, you're not going to recognize him, that would be alarming. But Friedkin's decision to just take out the word, what the hell? Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. What's your take on this, Anne?
Well, I always think if it's the artist making the change, then it's the artist making the change. So that's something different. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of things about The Exorcist, frankly, I find really friggin' offensive. But whatever. I just don't watch it a lot. But yeah. So that's it's the artist's choice, and sometimes people, you do things when you're younger or in a different time, and you look back and go, yeah, that's not okay with me now. We change and mature. too.
Yeah. And I just to bring this in for a landing, it reminds me of when we did the reframed series on TCM, and so many people got up in arms, like, they're canceling these movies, they're changing these movies, all this stuff, none of which was true.
Yeah.
We were showing the movies intact the way they were made, and then having a conversation about why was this considered acceptable at the time and why is it not acceptable now. We showed the Fred Astaire blackface scene from Swing Time.
Yeah.
We didn't cut it out of the movie and say that's reprehensible. We said Fred Astaire thought he was doing a great tribute to Bill Robinson when he made this scene, and the culture was such that they had no sensitivity whatsoever that this might be considered deeply offensive to black people, right?
Yeah.
And what's so hard about just owning up to it, because Fred Astaire loved Bill Robinson.
Yeah.
And thought this guy's the greatest tap dancer of all time.
Yeah.
And he wanted to pay tribute to him somehow. And it's now considered a hugely offensive way to do it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that TCM got a lot of grief from people who were, it was like a tripwire, and they just they're so keyed up and ready to object to everything about cancel culture that it's like, we're not canceling anything. We're showing the movie, right? We're showing The Searchers and talking about the fact that Ethan Edwards is driven by racism. I mean, his entire character, he's a racist character.
Yeah.
Why is it wrong to talk about that? We're showing the movie. The movie's great. It's a fantastic film. One of the greatest Westerns ever made. But people take very superficial takes on these things these days. And as long as they're not saying we're putting this movie on the shelf and you're never going to see it, that bothers me. There was a guy on the cruise. I got to tell you this, Ann. This is where it gets really complicated. There was a guy on the cruise who buttonholed the hosts and said, when is TCM going to show Song of the South?
Yeah.
And it's like, never.
Well, Disney won't release it. Disney is not. I think the last time Disney released Song of the South was a Japanese Laserdisc.
Yeah. I mean, there is no way that
Disney was not going to let that out of the vault.
and it's, that's a Disney decision.
Yeah.
And if that film were ever to be screened again, it has to be completely it has to be contextualized. Mm-hmm. So people understand, because, Song of the South was the highest grossing movie the year that it was released, which was 46 or 47 or something. I remember always going back to say, well, 46 had to be the year that noir made tons of money, right? I mean, Postman Always Rings Twice and Gilda and all this stuff. Song of the South was so far and away the most popular movie that year. But the racial stereotyping in that movie is so god-awful that, no, it's not going to be shown again. And you have to kind of balance, what is the value of showing it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's right? Like what I would say about Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation is actually a really important film in terms of filmmaking and
hugely
film grammar
important
and stuff.
Film.
It's a really, really important film.
Yeah.
It's also the most disgustingly racist thing I've ever seen. And I think if you're really interested in film, yeah, I think you should see it. If you're not really interested in film, the history of film and film grammar and stuff, I would not see it, because I think most people will be so offended by it. Unless you really have a deep interest in film, I'm not really sure it's really worth watching. And I would certainly say,
it's going to make you very, very upset.
It's
It's going
an
to make a lot of
upsetting
people
film.
very, very upset.
And it made people upset at the time. I mean, that's an important thing to remember too, right? Is that it had huge protests. It also restarted the Klan in the South.
Yeah.
So it had real life implications. Um, and so he basically made an apology film, which is intolerance.
Yeah.
Which is why, but I was really angry because, they found the buried sets from Intolerance, and at the Hollywood and Highland Mall, they had them there. They had the elephants and the pillars, and they fucking took them down. And it was just like, okay, yes, he was racist, but that was literally his apology film. So are we going to pretend like D.W. Griffith
It's
never?
very, I know this.
No, he's
I
just good
love,
because he's important.
yep. I love this subject because it's so essential to the culture to be able to talk about this intelligently and understand that artists aren't superheroes. You know,
Yeah,
they're just, if they're good, they're trailblazers. And trailblazers have to show guts and originality and creativity and all of this stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good people or they're on the side of right or anything. It's just like they're just doing this thing, right? And D.W. Griffith established film grammar. I mean, he basically helped create the lexicon of cinema, right? And that's just a fact. It doesn't mean you have to say he's the greatest filmmaker of all time. And I don't think it means you have to say that film should be locked up and never seen. I mean, it's clearly a historical artifact at this point, right? And I think the correct answer was exactly what happened. Like somebody made another version, right? A Birth of a Nation was made again as an answer to Griffith's film. And to me, that's the right way to do it. Just answer back. Don't censor it. Don't hide it. Just if you have a better response or you have a bigger statement to make, then make that statement.
yeah, and I think it's also important things like with things about portraying, things that were racist or sexist or so many things in the past, or the way communism is portrayed. I mean, there's been a lot of really problematic things, but I think to shut those films away or to censor them is like giving us a free pass. And it's just like, no, you need to understand that we live in a society where this kind of attitude and ideas were acceptable. And like I said, also with Birth of the Nation, I mean, people need to talk about the fact that, like I said, restarted the Klan. I mean, that had a horrible, horrible ripple effect.
Yeah, I mean, it had the effect of teaching people how to make really exciting films with cross-cutting and moving cameras and all this stuff. And yes, the point of the film is reprehensible.
Yeah.
The approach, the attack that Griffith used making the film is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I personally don't have a huge problem trying to separate these two things. I mean, there are filmmakers that I love their work, and it's like, oh my God, but I don't have any clue what they're trying to say, or I don't need to pass judgment on them as people. I mean, I love Gaspar Noé's films. I find them the only movies that I like have to suck it up and prepare myself to watch are like Gaspar Noé movies, and they're extraordinary. I don't think I ever want to meet Gaspar Noé, but I will always watch his films and defend his right to make these crazy, disturbing movies that he makes. Anyway.
Yeah, and with me, like I just don't want to watch his films. I watched one, but I just like in the same thing. I don't watch any of the fringe extremism films, which is a big and very popular horror genre. And it's like, I have no desire. I'm never going to watch Terrifier, which is an American film either, because that's just not stuff I want to watch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's that people can do that. They can be like, yeah, I mean, they can make all the films, they want, that's
Yeah.
fine. I just
Yeah.
not interested.
Anyway,
sorry, we've kind of wandered.
no, it's good. James, I thank you for that question because obviously it's a good hot button issue these days, and it's just interesting to me. Well, we've discussed that.
I think
one.
we've covered it.
We can move on. We can move on from that one.
Okay, and this is from Joe on Long Island. Finally watched Howard Duff and Shakedown recently, and while I was quite surprised how unscrupulous Duff's Jack Early was from the very beginning of the film, what was more intriguing was his character's homme fatale status. From the first time he goes to Bruce Bennett's newspaper office for a job, and he turns all the heads of the women in the office, to his ruthless seduction of Peggy Dow, to his screwing over of Bruce Bennett, Brian Donlevy's wife, Florence Tierney, and probably would have screwed over Tierney's girlfriend if he had had one in the film.
No question.
He is literally unapologetic from the word go. Talk about sex as a weapon. Character reminds me of a degree to Jack Palance's character in Sudden Fear, but there we're not entirely sure about Lester Blaine's motivations till the end, why Jack Early is pretty much a narcissistic scumbag from the start. Sorry, I didn't edit this one because I
narcissistic scumbag. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there any more blatant homme fatale in film noir?
Wow. That's a good one. I just did that thing again where my camera went out of focus. What's going on with this thing? There we go. Now it's back. I now see how to bring it back. I don't know. That's a good question. That script was originally called, when it was written, Nat Dallinger and I think Don Martin were the screenwriters of that. And it was originally called The Magnificent Heel. And I think clearly that character was based on Arthur Felig, on Ouija, right? Newspaper photographer who was Johnny on the spot, who could get there first. But I don't, at that point in 1950, there's no way that a guy like Ouija was going to be the main character in a movie. So when they got Howard Duff, they kind of, put a lot of sex appeal in the character and made that the challenge. It's like he's appealing and he's charming and he's all of these things, but he's a complete, narcissistic scumbag. Yeah. Is there any bigger example of that in a noir film?
You could argue Sam Spade is.
Yeah, but he's not. He has his own moral compass.
That's true.
Yeah, he does sleep with his partner's wife. That's happening, right? But Sam Spade doesn't strike me as being overly narcissistic. He just seems like he's very pragmatic and very much a realist.
Yeah.
And knows how things work, and I do point this out whenever I talk about detective movies and things like, these guys aren't officers of the law. A private detective has nothing to do with upholding the law. You're working for a client, and you can be as unscrupulous as you want to be if you're a private eye, right? As long as you don't get caught and lose your license. So I mean, that's a good example of that.
The Prowler.
Yeah, the Prowler. Yeah, you're right. Van Heflin in the Prowler is definitely a homme fatale. I don't know. He works his wiles on Susie Gilvray.
Yeah.
I don't know that it works on everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, in Shakedown, it's clearly. Everybody is like, wow, who's this guy? I just think that Webb Garwood, the character that Heflin plays, it has clearly got his sights on this one woman. If I can turn this one woman's head
Yeah.
and take control of her, that's enough.
Yeah.
Jack Early was clearly, I mean, his hubris was that he was going to do this to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it is a very distinctive character in noir. And that's what makes the ending of Shakedown so very satisfying. You know, when he gets his comeuppance, it's the audience. It's rare when you see a protagonist get their just desserts and the whole audience just kind of laughs.
Mhm.
You know, like, well, finally, this guy got what he deserved. Yeah, I really like that movie. I think it's a terrific film. You know my story about that, right? Showing that in LA years ago. Okay, I'll try to make this quick. So I had booked that film, which quite honestly I had never seen. I had booked it. It's a Universal picture, and it's like, do you guys have a print of this? And they're like, yeah, we do. And I was so excited to show this movie, and we showed it. I forget the day. It was very early in the noir festivals in LA, before there was even a Noir City, and it was the wrong movie. It was a movie called The Shakedown, not Shakedown, but The Shakedown, which was a British film from like 1957, and Donald Pleasance is in it. I can't even remember who the main actor is. But it's about a dirty picture racket or something in England. You can imagine how tasteful that is being made in England, right? And it was so funny because so many people came out. That was kind of like a coming out party, because I reckon like Joe Dante was in the audience, and Curtis Hanson was in the audience, and Leonard Maltin was in the crowd and everything. And it's like they all came out because, wow, Eddie has found this movie that none of us have seen. And then it's the wrong movie, right? So that was embarrassing. And fortunately, there's a incredibly bizarre musical number in The Shakedown where they sing the theme song, and it's like the worst song ever written, because the singer, this chanteuse, is rhyming everything with shakedown. And it's like, who thought this was a good idea? You know, it's a takedown. We're all headed for a breakdown, a shakedown. And it was just, but man, did that song win the audience over. Like the audience was just howling and like cheering by the time that song was over. And I'll never forget Leonard, who I didn't know that well at the time. He, as he's leaving the theater, he turns to me and he says, "Eddie, I'm going to go home and give that another star." and Malton's movie guide, you know. And then years later, we actually showed the right one, and that was September 11th. That day, the actual day, was when we were doing the makeup of Shakedown. So there were probably like 14 people in the theater to see the right version of that film. We've rectified that in the meantime. I've shown it a bunch of times. It's a really cool movie. So thank you for that question, John. Joe on Long Island. Thank you.
Joe on Long Island.
Okay. This is an unsigned question. Thanks to recent festivals at Cinema Ritrovato and MoMA, we're all Ugo Fregonese fans now. Can you talk about Black Tuesday and when you think it may be available to watch on TCM and or Blu-ray? From Unsigned. Okay. Background on this. Okay, Black Tuesday is a Ugo Fregonese film directed by him from, I think, 1954 with Edward G. Robinson and Peter Graves, and it's pretty cool. Stanley Cortez cinematography. But I'm giving all the credit here to my friend Ehsan Hoshbakhsh, my friend from Iran, who is the huge Ugo Fregonese fan. Like he is a huge fan of John Stahl and Henry King. These are all like Hollywood directors that he's a champion of them because they don't get their due. And yeah, the Fregonese Black Tuesday is going to be, I'll just admit this right now, we're showing it as part of the Noir City Festival in January at the Grand Lake Theater on a double bill with another foreign language prison break movie that's very different, but very interesting. And I just want to give, I have no idea when the film is going to be coming out on Blu-ray or whatever. Of course, I would show it immediately on TCM, but those broadcast rights have not been sorted out. But I'm giving Ehsan all the credit in the world for his persistence in hunting this down and making sure that there was a screenable copy of the movie to show. I showed it probably 15 or 16 years ago in LA, and that print, who knows what became of that print? It just disappeared. We asked for it many times and never got any response. But now it's more available, which I'm happy for. And I just want to give a quick, huge shout out. Ehsan made this film called Celluloid Underground. It's a movie a documentary film that he made about his life as a cinephile in Iran after the revolution, right? When the Ayatollah and the fundamentalists took over the culture. And it's a fabulous movie that is, he just finished it. I saw it in Morelia at the film festival there. It screened in Bologna. I think it will screen as part of this Fregonese festival at MoMA in New York. And I encourage everyone to see it, because everybody who's a cinephile who in this country who complains about anything, and you know, James, I'm not picking on you because you brought up this question about the French Connection, but that kind of thing compared to what Ehsan was dealing with in Iran, where they were just outright put you in jail for showing or possessing a movie made in the West. And Ehsan's film is about, so how do you get a film education and become a lover of international cinema when you exist in a culture like that is extraordinary. It's just an absolutely fantastic movie that shows the lengths that we, you know, I get a lot of credit for being someone who preserves films. Imagine being a guy, and this is not Ehsan, this is his friend Ahmad, who the movie is really about, who sought out and preserved films from around the world and hid them in locations all around Tehran to hide them from the government. And he kept posters and everything, and basically lived the life of a hermit whose sole purpose was to keep these things in existence and cared for when there was no legal way to show them in the culture. It was like he was just doing this because someday this will all be over, and then people will see how great these movies are. It's extraordinary.
And what's the name of the film again?
It's called Celluloid Underground, and it's a remarkable document, and all praise to Ehsan for making this film when he had no idea what would ever come of it.
Yeah.
When he met Ahmad, he recorded everything. He photographed everything on whatever video equipment he could get his hands on. He did all of this for posterity, well aware of the fact that if the authorities found out what he was doing, they were going to put him in jail. And now Ehsan has managed to get out of the country. He lives in London. He's one of the more esteemed film programmers in the world at this point. He's still a pretty young man, and he's really trying very, very hard to get films made in Iran prior to the Ayatollah released and viewable. And I mean, I've seen a lot of this stuff in Bologna, and it would blow people's minds to see movies made in Iran, when the Shah was in power, to see how incredibly westernized that culture was, and the rock and roll music, and they're driving Cadillac convertibles, and the women have, haute couture and the beehive hairdos and all this stuff. I think it would come as a shock to people that the world is not just the way calcified in the way you think it is. Change does actually happen. And anyway, I couldn't have loved that movie Ehsan made any more. It's spectacular. Okay. Now I'll probably get in trouble for saying all that, because I'm going to get him in trouble if this somehow is on the internet and is seen in Iran or something. But hey, he made the movie. I remember one time he wrote something for the Noir City magazine, and we posted it as a freebie on our website, and he immediately contacted me and said, take it down, they'll see it. He was still living in Iran at the time. He said, if they see this, they'll put me in jail. So yes, our piddling little concerns in this culture are mild compared to what some people go through.
But a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of people having very serious problems in this country too.
Oh yeah, very, very, very true. But pick your battles.
Exactly. Okay, and this is from Frank. This is. Can you tell us what this film is?
I know. I have to say I previewed this. So here's the deal, Anne. I want you to read this. I don't know the answer to Frank's question. I don't know the movie, but let's go with it in case somebody watching this can identify the film.
Yeah, and if you are watching this, you can put it in the comments on when we screen on Facebook, but more importantly, if someone can put it in the comments when this is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because those comments are just a little easier to find. So if somebody knows what this is, just put a comment on our YouTube on the recording of this. Okay. I saw a film a long time ago on TV, and I'm trying to find the title and then hopefully view the movie somehow. All I remember was there was a murder, and the murderer grabbed a man's coat and shoes as she was fleeing the crime scene. She passed a neighbor who knew her, but the neighbor was bent down to picking something up off the ground. This allowed the neighbor to only see the coat and the shoes. The witness can't make any meaningful identification, but the murderer and her husband aren't sure that they are home free. They have the neighbor over for tea, and she wears the same coat. Everyone enjoys the get-together, and the guilty couple realize they have nothing to worry about until someone drops something on the floor and the witness bends down to pick it up. From this position, she recognizes the hostess is wearing the same shoes and coat, and the gig is up. So if anyone has the movie title, just put it in our YouTube comments, and hopefully we can help Frank out.
It actually sounds, for some reason, I think this was a TV movie.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that. I just get the impression that this was a TV movie.
Yes.
I don't know why. Because he does say he saw it in 1971.
Yeah.
Right? But I do not know the movie.
And it's interesting because it's also very similar to something that happens in Agatha Christie's 450 from Paddington.
Okay. Well, it also sounds like it had to be kind of short.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the climax of the story, I mean, this sounds like an Alfred Hitchcock Presents show or something.
Yeah.
Where if the end is like, oh, I dropped my knife on the floor, and then you bend down and there's the big revelation, like, oh my God, it's, now I recognize this. Because who looks at shoes, right? Yeah. Except my wife. My wife always looks at shoes. I mean, that's the first thing she notices on people. So anyway, that's it. Sorry, Frank. Can't help you out, but maybe somebody watching this show will recognize what this is.
Put it in the YouTube comments.
Put it in the YouTube comments. Okay, and of course, it wouldn't be an Ask Eddie show if there was not a question from our friend Michael in Post Falls, Idaho. And Michael asks, I have to wonder how many questions he has asked.
Seems like we do. Him and Lauren from Chicago are neck and neck.
Yeah, and people are going to say, you always pick Michael. And it's like, well, you don't understand. Michael has submitted like 4,000 questions. So, Okay. I recently discovered the YouTube channel Dr. Noir, created by Matthew Berger, who helped establish Noir City Boston. Well, I don't know if Michael helped establish Noir City Boston. He worked our merchandise table when we were initially there. That's true. I was fascinated by how he used metrics to analyze what is film noir based on the opinions of experts on the subject, given, as he says, quote, no single universally agreed upon definition of film noir exists. I was curious what you think of his methodology, since the resulting lists of top noirs determined by it don't contain any real surprises. And he said, I just ordered his book, Interrogating Memory. Film noir spurs a deep dive into my family history and my own, and I can't wait to read it. Okay. I don't really, I have a copy of Matthew's book. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet. When it comes to metrics and methodology and stuff, it is anathema to the way I approach the subject. So I know that he's not the first one to do that. There was a guy, I think, named Mike Keeney or something like that, who used, kind of a grading system to say if it has this, you get this many points and blah, blah, blah. And my whole approach to the subject is just vastly different, because I don't think you can come up with, like Mike Keeney, I think when he did it, he said the most noir movie ever made was The Mask of Demetrios. And I'm going to tell you that The Mask of Demetrios is not more noir than Out of the Past. That's there's just no way in hell, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it becomes an obsession. It is, I think, trying to determine what are the great noirs and all this stuff, trying to apply methodology that is undeniable and irrefutable is impossible, because the whole point of this is that everybody gets to have their opinion. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the point of it. You can't deny that more of these films were made between this year and understand the reasons why. But then arguing within those brackets, so which of those is the most noir, is, to me, kind of beside the point. That's that's what I have to say.
And also, there's also it's art, so there's that. And also, there's also personal taste. Like we were talking about earlier when I said I don't like French extremist horror films, but I can't say that that's less horror or the most type of or whatever, because it's everybody sort of has the things that they like and dislike about films. So
it's a bit of like a Rorschach test or something. Everybody's obsession with, is it noir? Isn't it noir? I mean, obviously, I'm not complaining about it, because it keeps people watching the movies, and it engages people's interest and gives them a starting point to talk about this stuff, and it helps engage the brain. I just, if I tend to like noir stories in which the bad guys are the protagonists.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that's what defines noir.
Yeah.
right? No, because it doesn't actually, because there's a ton of, The Big Heat is not a movie, and it's about the central character as a cop, right? And I'd say that's a noir film, right? I mean, Mildred Pierce is a noir film, and there's no outright criminality in the movie until the murder, but it's all good as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Well, and I think too sometimes, yeah, I know I'm talking about horror again, but one of the things I really find fascinating about horror is that a lot of times, like, people don't want to admit they like horror. So they'll say, oh, this is elevated horror. And it's like, well, all that stuff's been discussed in other horror films. Or they'll be like, well, like the classic example to me is like Silence of the Lambs. And, um, when push comes to shove in Silence of the Lambs, people say it's a thriller, it's not horror. It's like he wears a guy's face. I just really feel very strongly if you wear someone else's face,
That's a
it's
horror
a horror
movie.
film.
Yes, but
But people will push back on that,
of
and
course,
and stuff like that, and so it becomes like a debate, and sometimes I think if people really like a film, they might describe it as film noir, as maybe if it's not, or other people will be like, it's no, it's a melodrama because it's a female protagonist.
because I don't think
Yeah.
that Thomas Perry, right? Isn't that the author's name? Who wrote Silence of the Lambs,
Thomas
and
Harris.
Thomas Harris. Thomas
Yeah.
Harris, right? Uh, I don't think Thomas Harris felt that he was writing horror books. I think
Yeah.
he felt he was writing procedurals,
Yeah.
crime procedurals. Like, these are the most horrific crimes I can think of, and this is how they track these people down. And but yet, how could you not look at something like Hannibal?
Yeah. Well, that's this TV series is definitely horror.
That's a horror. That's a
Yeah.
horror thing,
Absolutely. And also Silence of the Lambs, it also has a very definite, there's a real gothic horror element with him and Clarice, and then the novel Hannibal is even that feels really like a gothic horror film. Hannibal, the novel, really feels like it's shifting much more into the horror genre.
All of which, the fluidity of it all does not bother me in the least.
No, it makes this fun, and I love hybrid stuff.
Totally.
Like something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is sci-fi, it's horror, and it's noir, and it's like all those things together.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, you go. I think we're at number 8.
Okay, and this is from Melanie. I'm learning about noirs as I'm watching, so forgive me if this has been asked before. As a viewer, it seems to me that the B noirs are more thrilling and often more creative than the A noirs. Is this purely subjective, or is it a thing?
I think it's a thing, Melanie.
Me too.
You're watching a movie in a very intelligent, interactive way, where I think sometimes when you watch films, if you're really into movies, you are conscious of the limitations that the filmmakers are up against in terms of either money or time, or you're not getting Spencer Tracy and Betty Davis in your film. You're going to deal with some lesser level of performance, and so you have to be super creative. And I think that's where you see B filmmaker, and that's why the Hollywood studio system was so fantastic, because it was like a training ground for people to say, okay, we're going to give you some money and some time, and let's see what you can do with it. And then if you made a really compelling, if you were Joseph H. Lewis and you made My Name is Julia Ross and So Dark the Night and these other movies, then it was like, wow, this guy knows how to tell a story, and he's not wasting our time and money, and he's being very, very creative with it. Then they hand you the A picture. But as I think Melanie is suggesting, they're watching more closely when they hand you the A picture. You don't quite have the same freedom to just cut loose and do whatever you want to do because, hey, it's just a B picture. Nobody's paying attention, right? That's why I think B movies, the really good ones, come off as more challenging and exciting, is largely because the filmmakers were left to their own devices and the studio bosses didn't really care.
Yeah, and I think this is, go ahead.
No, that was it.
No, and I think that's one of the things that I know I've said this a lot. I may have said it here, but I certainly say it to almost anyone that will talk to me for more than 5 minutes. But I mean, I think the reason why the really interesting films right now that are being produced are horror films is because it's a low investment, so they don't care. And there's not studio notes and all that stuff. And so you have like people like, Ty West, Mike Flanagan, and those people just coming in and really doing interesting things. And then, I mean, almost always the bigger budgeted horror films, and I consider Scream in this, which I think is like the most overrated horror series of films, they're never as good. They just don't have the creativity. I mean, if you look at like, the original Halloween and then the Blumhouse trilogy, and Blumhouse is still moderately budgeted, but I mean, the difference is like night and day. There's just no comparison. But like something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, that was done on a nothing budget, and that film is just amazing.
Still to this day, that holds up is like an absolutely terrifying movie. Thanks to Marilyn Burns, the greatest screamer in the history of motion pictures.
That's an amazing performance. It really, really is. I mean, the physicality
she's incredible in that movie.
She's amazing.
She's like an MVP, MVP. God. She is the sustained. I want to say the through note on it, but her through note is just screaming like continuously through the entire movie, and it's like, how can she keep doing this? It's like, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. But also, like I said, it's also a very physical performance. Just the physicality of what she was doing, that it's just which you never get away with in a big studio film.
No, absolutely not. And it's interesting in terms of noir, they weren't B movies, but so many great filmmakers that we know today started out making low budget movies that were the equivalent of a B film. I mean, Blood Simple, the Coen brothers, Blood Simple, and Chris Nolan's Following. And, there's just a lot of those films. I mean, those are two obvious ones because those guys have gone on to have massive careers. But, I mean, Mean Streets, in a way, is a film noir. That was, I know that Scorsese was clearly inspired by Force of Evil and the relationship between the brothers. They're not brothers in the movie, Keitel and De Niro, but that kind of dynamic was important to his creation of that film. But I just think that Melanie is right on in the suggestion that there's less supervision of B movies than there is of A movies, and hence you're going to find more daring, challenging, creative work in B movies made by daring, challenging, and creative artists.
Yeah.
I mean, by the same token, a lot of B movies were just made by guys who are clock punchers, and they're really not that good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I just showed this movie Strange Bargain on Noir Alley, and it's not a well-directed film, but the screenplay and the acting are sufficient, and just the overall craft of the movie is sufficient to make it really engaging. But the director is he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Yeah, and so I guess John mentioned this to me at lunch. So I guess with that movie, Strange Bargain, there's like a sequel to it in an episode of Murder, She Wrote.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was. I mentioned this in the outro, and then people, of course, on social media were all over it before I could even open my mouth to introduce the movie.
Yeah.
People were saying, "Have you seen the Murder She Wrote episode?" You know, which was really cool because yeah, 38 years later, there was an episode of Murder She Wrote that was based on the plot of Strange Bargain, and they brought back the same actors to like Jeffrey Lynn served time in prison for this crime, and then his wife, who stuck by him, wants Jessica Fletcher to revisit the case and clear her husband's name. And the flashbacks to the original crime are all scenes from the original RKO movie made in 1949. And so it's showing Jeffrey Lynn and Martha Scott and Harry Morgan, you know, as they were in 1949, and then they're in the Murder She Wrote episode of their actual age, which I think it was made in 1983 or 4 or something, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever, 38 years after whatever it was, 1949. I'm no good with dates. Just forget the dates thing. Okay. Okay, am I?
Yes, you.
It's me. Okay. All right. Here's the question from Dave and Fiona. What is the story behind the production of Shed No Tears? Okay. There is a movie that I am going to guarantee you 99.9% of the people watching this have not seen Shed No Tears.
I have not seen it.
we liked the film, and we found the basic premise of the movie to be especially intriguing. One suspects that Eagle Lion must have found the movie to be somewhat promising, as they paid to cast Wallace Ford and June Vincent. Hate to break your bubble, Dave and Fiona, but I don't think they were expensive. However, despite the very noirish plot, the production offers few of the other hallmarks of film noir. Why isn't the film any better than it is? Is it simply a matter of Eagle Lion being unable to afford a proper production? Well, this dovetails right with what we were just talking about. Did they just hire the wrong crew to make the film? Did they just assume that Ford and Vincent could carry the film? Please enlighten us. Well, Dave and Fiona, I am so thrilled that you think I would actually have some insight into this. Like I knew what they were thinking in the front office at Eagle Lion. Like what did Brian Foy think about this? I'm sure that what they felt was this script is good enough with a couple of decent actors. We can get away with this as a bottom half of a double bill. But just like we were saying, and I honestly can't even remember, is it Gene Yarborough who was the director of Shed No Tears? That sounds about right. It was just an assignment. They did not bring inventiveness or passion or just the desire to do that much better to the film. I mean, I've seen the movie. It's not very good. And, I went into, I tracked it down. There is a copy of it at the UCLA Film and Television Archive that I was able to access and watch, thinking this would be a discovery that would be fantastic, because Wallace Ford never got to play the lead in a movie. And so, wow, what would that be like? And it's just not that good. And Dave and Fiona are absolutely right. I mean, the plot of the film is pretty decent. It's very much a James M. Cain, kind of husband and wife insurance scam kind of thing. But it just doesn't. It has no life. It's pretty lifeless and very, very low budget, and it shows it. So, all your reasons for suggesting why the film doesn't take off are right on the nose. They didn't try. They didn't try that hard. And that happens quite a bit. And it sometimes it surprises me when people discover a movie and they're like, this is the greatest thing ever, And it's like, are we watching the same movie? I think people just say that because it's an unknown film. I mean, a few weeks ago on Noir Alley, I showed this movie, The Big Caper, and it's not good. It's like one of the worst. It's like one of the worst adaptations of a Lionel White novel I've seen. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
The actors are interesting. The setting is kind of interesting. It plays around with some interesting ideas, but it doesn't do them very well.
No.
And yet, people on social media were like, I love this film. This is an undiscovered classic. This is so great. And I'm not going to say you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, if you like the movie, you like the movie, right?
Yeah.
I mean, great. I'm glad you felt it was time well spent. To me, it just felt like a different director could have really done something a lot more with this movie, right? I mean, if Stanley Kubrick had directed that movie, as a young man, or even Paul Wenkos, who, did The Burglar, if they had directed it, it would have been special.
Yeah.
There's nothing really special about The Big Caper. It's just it's just a goofy movie. Anyway, that's also there's a PS on this from Dave and Fiona. Cat butt alert.
Before you do the PS, because this thought popped in my head, and the previous question was one of the things that John Alton said, because John Alton, he's got blacklisted for MGM, which I'm not quite sure what the story of that is, but he said in a way he was kind of happy because he got to do a bunch of like really creative cinematography that he never could have gotten done if he was working on bigger projects.
Well, that's because he did An American in Paris. He shot the climactic ballet sequence in American in Paris, and the film won an Oscar for best cinematography, and I'm telling you that it won for that sequence.
Yeah.
And of course, he didn't actually get the Oscar. I'm spacing now, I'm sorry to say. And I do want to just throw out that my dear friend John Bailey, the cinematographer, died last week, and he was just a wonderful guy and so supportive of the work I did with the Film Noir Foundation. And he was also the head of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences for a while. And John was just a great guy. And his wife, Carol Littleton, is one of the great film editors in the business. And it was quite a shock that John passed away. We've spoken quite often recently, and whenever I have any questions about cinematographers or anything, John was always my go-to guy, and he told me the whole backstory about John Alton working on An American in Paris and all that. And I was very devastated by his passing. So I just want to give a shout out there, and check out John's movie China Moon, which is a neo-noir film with Ed Harris and a very, very young Benicio del Toro, that is based on The Man Who Cheated Himself. And it seems like a lifetime ago, but when I did one of my first book signings for Dark City, when it first came out in 1998, John Bailey came to my reading at Skylight Books in LA, and he asked some very great questions at the end. And when I said some kind of comment about how, like, wow, you know a lot about movies, why is that? And he introduced himself, and I said, wow, you made China Moon. And he was so like, wow, you saw that. And I said, yeah, it's an uncredited remake of The Man Who Cheated Himself. And John was like, what? Like the guys who wrote the screenplay did not own up to the fact that they had knocked off that public domain movie, right?
Oh.
So that was pretty interesting. But John was, and so watch China Moon. And if you haven't seen Paul Schrader's Mishima, John photographed that, and it is absolutely extraordinary.
That is a stunning film.
It is an unbelievably great film.
And the cinematography is incredible.
The cinematography is genius. Start to finish, it's absolute genius.
I mean, it's a huge part of the storytelling. Huge.
Absolutely. I mean, there are those rare movies where you see a director and a cameraman working together the way Schrader and Bailey were working together on that film, because it's very unique storytelling. You know, the way he develops the way he adapts like some of Mishima's stories as his telling the backstory of his life, and then intercuts them with him, you know, in contemporary Japan. And, you know, it's an exceptional movie. Anyway, produced by my friend Tom Luddy, who also died earlier this year. So I'm, this getting old shit is really kind of has its downside. Has its downside. Yeah. Anyway,
you ready for the PS?
Yeah, Dave and Fiona say, you want me to read this, or are you going to read this?
I'll read it.
Okay.
During the TCM promo for your NOIR bar, you asked us to drink in the darkness. Do you mean drink in an unlit place? Or would you have us consume and be consumed by Stygian depths of the demi-monde in which fate has entrapped us?
The latter. It's funny, you know, when you do a book and you realize you're going to be signing it, you have to come up with some kind of, you know, some kind of thing. And then when I thought of, you know, right, you're doing a book on cocktails and film noir. It's like drink in the darkness, right? So it's the best of all worlds when you come up with something that has a double meaning.
Yeah.
So like drink in the darkness is like see in the shadows, like drink in the darkness. But of course, it's also like drink in the darkness, you know? Like don't be afraid of the dark, which is how I sign the kids' book, the Kitty Farrell book. If people want me to sign that and they say it's for my grandchild or my whatever, you know, then I will say, how old are they? And if they're under 10, I will sign, don't be afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
Right. That's like the catchphrase for that book, which I actually use in the book at one point. But it's important to think of these things, you know?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know, but very cool.
Yeah. So that was good, Ann. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
I can't believe we got 90 minutes out of 9 questions.
I'm counting it as 10 because of the PS.
Okay, very good. Very good.
So usually if we stick to 10, we manage to keep it to about an hour and a half. So that seems to be the golden number for us. And these questions are from June. So we're
slowly catching up.
We're slowly catching up. So if you have submitted a question after June, you're wondering, are they ever answering my question? We'll get to it, I promise.
It's coming right up.
And if you have questions you would like to submit, this is how we do it. You subscribe to our newsletter, which is free. You go to filmnoirfoundation.org and you can sign up. And then when we send out newsletters, that's how we solicit questions. And then if you're really feeling generous, when you sign up for the newsletter, if you donate $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation at filmnoirfoundation.org, then you receive the digital edition of NOIR City Magazine. And it's important that you have to donate and sign up because with the digital edition, we send you a link to download it. So we have to have your email address or we can't do that. And if you already get the magazine, just donate again.
Donating is good. Donating is good.
Yeah, keeps the lights on.
It does indeed keep it more than keeps the lights on. It keeps these movies in circulation, you know.
Exactly.
So we'll have to figure out how to do one of these live at some point. I got to tell you, Ann, you have so many fans. Nice. Seriously, I mean, on the cruise, I was really, really pleasantly surprised how many people approached me on the cruise. I did book signings. It was fantastic. And so many people said, I never miss, you know, watching you and Ann do your things. And it's wonderful, and it's great because obviously what we're doing here is totally separate and distinct from TCM,
Yeah.
But obviously there's a lot of crossover here, and people enjoy this. I love how low tech we are, Anne. I mean, obviously we're on Zoom, but there's a certain high tech element to this. But I don't think we want to jazz it up too much. I
mean,
can't.
well, we come from the DIY punk generation, so
You bet. You bet.
and I think it shows in this.
Yeah, I love it. People like the cats, and it's like a static camera. It takes me back to Dialing for Dollars. What's the count and the amount? I feel like maybe we should start doing that. Like people should put their phone numbers on their questions, and then I can call somebody on the phone. And if they answer the phone during the Ask Eddie episode, but anyway, we're not live, so that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to
work. But that would be pretty fun. Oh. So we'll figure it out. We'll come up with something.
So anyway, we hope for our local folks that we will see you at NOIR City Xmas.
NOIR City Xmas.
That. And of course, we'd love to see you at the festival. And just let people know as we get confirmation for our 2014, Jesus Christ.
2024. Thanks for shaving 10 years off our lives, Anne, but no, that's not going to work.
Our 2024 festival, we do post those on the news page at filmnoirfoundation.org and at noircity.com, which is our festival page, just so people know, because I know that's always a big question. It's like, oh, when are you coming? When are you coming? When are you coming? I know, especially with NOIR City Hollywood, I've had people ask me about that.
I can tell you, I'll just tell you right now, NOIR City Hollywood is March 22nd to the 31st.
Fantastic.
That is when that is going to happen. So we're not abutting the TCM Classic Film Festival, which starts on April 18th, but it's good. It makes sense. We'll be back at the Egyptian Theater, which has been spectacularly remodeled, and I'll be doing NOIR City Seattle again. NOIR City in Hollywood will, I suspect, will be back in Boston this coming year.
Philadelphia is
booked.
Yeah.
That's in November. It's actually Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, but that'll be in November. There will be NOIR City Chicago will happen. NOIR City Detroit will happen. NOIR City DC will happen, and Philadelphia and Portland. We'll be adding Portland in 2024. We don't know exactly when yet, but my favorite one is we'll be adding NOIR City Paris in June of 2024. I'll be doing a grand 3 days in Paris that will be great fun. So if anybody feels like they've always wanted to go to Paris, but what would I do there? All I really do with my life is watch movies. Well, you can go to Paris.
Please tell me, if you've never been to Paris and you go to Paris, you are not going to spend it at a friggin' cinema. Sorry,
well,
Eddie.
you can for 3 days, but go for a week or 10 days. And then use the festival as the basis for getting out and actually exploring Paris. I mean, because it's the greatest. So I'm excited about that. Okay, more details on that as they develop. More to come.
So
okay, Anne, I got to go cook dinner for my wife.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, this is kind of the fun of watching Ask Eddie, is you do get information sometimes before we do promotions of stuff.
Yeah, because I forget that there's a way to do this properly, and I just blurt it out.
You blurt stuff out.
It's all good. It's all good. So the people who watch this, you get a little scoop on stuff. So that's another good reason to hang in there and watch till the end. Watch till the end. You never know what we're going to say.
Exactly. So hopefully we will see you all in another 2 weeks. We're really trying to keep the 2-week schedule. And before you know it, we'll be in July questions.
Yes. Very good. Okay, Ann,
Okay.
so good talking to you. Somebody over your shoulder there on your left shoulder looks a little like hungry or suspicious or something.
That's Charlotte. She always looks vaguely angry.
Oh, okay. I don't think she looks angry. She's just like, "Are you done yet?"
Well, that's
Okay.
true because she doesn't like things that take my attention away from her.
Okay, very good. I totally understand. Now, the big stretch. Let her have her big moment. There it was, the big
There we go.
stretch. And now I'll bet you she's going to come right across the screen in a second. I see her little tail. Now let's see if she's going to do the full walk across. No, apparently not. Oh, there she is. I had it. See, I have a cat too. I know exactly how this works. Yes. Okay, and
Okay.
until next time.
Until next time. We'll
I'll
see y'all
see
later.
ya. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.